right, well, week 1 is in the books, and we are moving on to week 2. Week 1, we went 10-6, and I'll take that all day. I'll take that every day and twice on Sundays. I screwed that up, but you know what I mean. I'm going to go over the last week's games and touch on them a little bit, my reactions, while I'm doing the picks for week 2. So we're just going to jump straight into it. For tonight's game, we have Thursday Night Football, Vikings versus the Eagles. The Eagles had a rough time against the Patriots. They still won, and I still think that they're the better team in this matchup against the Vikings. The Vikings, obviously, they have a good offense. They struggled with turnovers, though. They had 2 fumbles and an interception, all via Kirk Cousins. And I'll get back to that later. The Eagles' defense last game, granted it was in rough weather conditions. I think it was pretty rainy in the Patriots-Eagles game. They came out hot. They started off with a 70-yard pick six from Darius Slay, and they only gave up 76 rushing yards because that defensive line is insane. And the Vikings have a banged-up O-line. Christian Darrisaw and Garrett Bradbury were banged up. I think Garrett Bradbury is out with a back issue. Christian Darrisaw had an ankle issue. And they're going to be going up against the Eagles' defensive line that that forced 27 pressures. So if Garrett Bradbury is out and Jalen Carter is going to force another 6 pressures on to primetime Kirk, I think that the Vikings are going to have a long, long Thursday night. Most pressures forced last week by the Eagles, and I think that they're going to have a field day against the Vikings. Honestly, we're starting off right away. Lock of the week, Philadelphia Eagles over the Minnesota Vikings. Moving on, we have the Ravens and the Bengals. The Bengals just looked really bad last week. Another game with bad weather, just to note that, but it wasn't close. They were dominated by the Browns. Burrow had a career low of 82 yards. Higgins put up a goose egg. He was 0 for 8. There's just no offensive impact. They have to protect Joe Burrow. Their offensive line was getting absolutely torched all game long by the Browns' defensive line and that new defense led by Jim Schwartz and, of course, Myles Garrett. With that, though, besides the bad weather, bad offense, and bad offensive line, Joe Burrow is 1-5 against the Browns in his career, so I think he's winless in Cleveland as well. So you can just keep that in the back of your head. It's just weird stuff happens in Cleveland when it's with the Bengals, but I think that I'm not going to hang too much. I'm not going to dwell on it too hard because he is 2-0 at home versus the Ravens. This is a home game for the Bengals. The Ravens, they were careless with the ball in week 1. Lamar Jackson was running out with it, got punched out. I think he fumbled another time. Didn't throw a pick, I don't think. And if they're going to keep being careless with the ball and giving it back to the Bengals offense, you cannot win games that way. And that offense is still a threat. It's still scary. So in this one, I'm not going to worry too much about the offensive performance by the Bengals in week 1. I'm going to take them here to beat the Ravens. Next, we have the Lions at the Seahawks. The Seahawks got flat out smacked around by the Rams last game. They were getting dusted by a Cooper Kupp-less Rams offense. Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell both had 119 yards. If they can drop these numbers on the Seahawks defense, who's to say that Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Josh Reynolds I think he led the team in receiving last week. Who's to say that they're not going to drop these numbers on the Seahawks as well? It's a home opener for the Lions coming off of a win over the defending Super Bowl champions, which I got wrong, and first time they sold it out, Ford Field, in their 21 years, something with the 1 at the end. It's going to be insanely loud. I don't think that the Seahawks are going to have a fun time on Sunday. So give me the Lions here. I have no reason not to pick them. Next, we have the Colts at the Texans, and I was going back and forth really hard on this one. The AFC South divisional games, first of all, are just absolutely terrible to pick. Anything can really happen, except for like that stretch where Derrick Henry absolutely owned the Jags, which he still does, but the Jags actually win now. What I did take away from week 1 is Anthony Richardson looked like the best rookie quarterback in the league out of the 3 that were drafted in the first 5 picks. Offense looked way better with him and Shane Steichen at the helm. The O-line, still garbage. It's something I feel like I'm going to be mentioning a lot in these week 1 reviews and week 2 picks. But you got to show the O-lineman some love, but you got to hold them accountable at the same time. So that's what I'm doing here. With these teams, I feel like the Texans and Colts, they feel very similar to me. They both have young QBs. They both have new coaches. So this is probably the hardest game for me to pick this week. But with that, I'm going to pick the Texans in this one. Even though the Texans struggled against the Ravens' run game last week, the Colts' leading rusher was Anthony Richardson, who had 40 yards. After that, nobody else even got up to 15 yards. They're so banged up. They're obviously missing Jonathan Taylor. Zach Moss is questionable to come back. Jake Funk got hurt, so they have Deion Jackson and possibly Zach Moss. So their offense is going to be one-dimensional because their run game is not a threat. So even though that was the Texans' weak point last week, I don't think that's something that they're not going to have to worry about. So I think the Texans will take advantage of that. And if you look at the spread, this is technically an upset. The Colts, at the time of this recording, are favorites. So give me the Texans and the upset of the week. Moving on to the Buccaneers and the Bears. Bears are the same old Bears, man. All these weapons out in the offseason just to have a shitty game plan and be reminded that the Packers own you. In this one, I can't see myself picking anybody but the Buccaneers. Their pass rush looked pretty good against the Vikings in week 1. The Bears' O-line stinks. So, unfortunately, I have the Buccaneers starting out 2-0. Hate to see it. Moving on, we have the Chiefs at the Jaguars. Lions did some solid work against the Chiefs last week, and I think that the Jaguars' offense is at the same level or potentially better than the Lions' offense. So their weapons are all over the place. They're definitely going to give KC a problem on defense, but noting that Kelsey's absence was a huge impact on last game. All the drops were terrible. Kadarius Toney, first receiver born without hands, truly inspirational. If those catches are made, we could see the Chiefs winning. And if Kelsey's in, they're probably winning. So as much as I'd like to see the Jaguars, basically at this point my second favorite team to root for in the season, as much as I want to see them beat the Chiefs, I don't feel comfortable picking KC to start off 0-2. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs here, but I won't be surprised if the Jaguars win. Moving on, we have the Packers at the Falcons. First game in the Jordan Love era started off fucking great for the Packers. Love looked like the real deal. The defense shut down the Bears' offense. Speaking of which, speaking of that shitty game plan by the Bears, the Falcons threw the ball 18 times last week. They're not airing it out. Ritter completed 15 of those passes. He averaged 3.5 air yards per attempt, and that is exactly what the Packers feasted upon against the Bears. So if the Falcons keep up their offense that can't produce, no matter how many weapons they have, they can draft all these weapons early, and they still won't put points up on the board because their offensive game plan is just terrible. So with that said, Packers starting off the Jordan Love era, 2-0. Next, we have the Raiders at the Bills. Man, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a Madden curse, But Josh Allen did not look like a cover athlete to me. He was irresponsible with the ball. He was forcing passes, and that's just not how you win games. It will literally do the opposite. Lose games. But they're going to be going up against the Raiders, who aren't typically known for having a good defense. They did hold the Sean Payton Broncos to only 16 points, which is something to be proud of. Doesn't really matter who you play. 16 points is not a lot. However, I see this game kind of similarly to the Bengals game where Josh Allen, like Joe Burrow, is not good against the Browns. Josh Allen in his career is not good against the Jets. He said it himself, same year. I'm just butchering these things. He said it himself, same shit, different year. So I won't hold on to it too much, just like I won't ship on the Bengals. I'm not going to jump ship on the Bills. The Raiders didn't really do anything wrong last week for me to stay away from them, but it's more so that the Bills are just the Bills, and I'm not going to overreact because of that Monday Night Football loss. So I am going to stick with the Bills, but if they lose to the Raiders, then it's time to panic. Moving on, we have the Chargers at the Titans. Chargers' pass defense was straight up cheeks. Speaking of cheeks, I don't know if you guys could see it, but this is ridiculous. I have a mountain growing on my cheek. Let's name it. Tyreek. Tyreek, the pimple on my cheek. Speaking of which, did you have Tyreek last week in fantasy? I didn't. But you know who I did have? Austin Eckler, Calvin Ridley, Justin Herbert, en route to a fantasy victory in the SM's Creator League. This week I got Missing San Diego. The man from Fantasy Rant, Evan Gooding. Listen, your downfall is going to be your team, the Chargers. You're going to be missing the San Diego Chargers because the LA Chargers are going to be your downfall this week. All right? And if I win, I might have to come on Fantasy Rant and let you guys hear it, because I know Dan and Mason are up next. See you this week, Evan. And then speaking of Tyreek exposed everybody on that Chargers defense. However, they don't really have much to worry about this week because Ryan Tannehill and that Titans offense was abysmal last week. Ryan Tannehill, 3 interceptions, under 200 yards passing, under 50% completion rate. Chargers should be able to take a deep breath this game to retune, rebuild, refuel. They'll get back on track this week, as long as Derrick Henry doesn't run wild on them, which could happen. But this one's just a tale of two teams, a bad defense versus a bad offense. So right now, I'm just going to take the better offense. I'm going to take the Chargers. 49ers at the Rams. These two teams both ran away with their games last week. Both dominated on offense. Both teams suffocated on defense. Another division rivalry game, so it's never safe. But I can stat and fact check all day. But I think the 49ers might be the best team in the NFL right now. Their defense looked possessed against the Steelers, and their offense was electric too. So I'm just going to take the 49ers here. Next, we have the Giants at the Cardinals. The Giants got embarrassed in primetime against Dallas. Absolutely horrid. Oh, I lost my notes. The game was basically over right as it started. But the Cardinals' defense was also surprisingly good last week. That's why they hired the new coach. As goofy as that guy is, that's why he's there. And it showed. He made a difference. They were flying last week against the Commanders. Almost cost me my lock of the week. I was really sweating it there because the Steelers made me lose my upset of the week. I could have started off really rough. After acknowledging that the Cowboys did really good, they were very destructive against a mistaken-prone Giants team. It was a fluky performance. Those games never happen. Not like that. So I give my respect to the Cowboys, but I think Daboll will get them back on track this week against the Cardinals. So I'm going to take the Giants here. So we got the Jets at the Cowboys. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers got hurt. Zach Wilson came in and was running for his life last game against that Bills defense. And if you thought he was struggling then, if you see him against the Cowboys defense, who was going berserk against the Giants, they're going to have a rough time. I almost put this as my lock, but I'm not going to. So if they had trouble getting past the Bills over a 4-turnover game by Josh Allen, they're not getting past the Cowboys. Just give me the Cowboys. Next, we have the Commanders at the Broncos. All right, Sean, you want to trade for Big Nuts Lutz. You want to bring all these former Saints over to Denver and run your new little offense with Russell Wilson just to get beat by the Raiders for the 7th time in a row. Meanwhile, the Saints, their kicker, was nailing shit all day. Will Lutz cost you the game. Hey, that's all on you, buddy. And then you go back to your Bounty Gate ways. Send a hit out on Jacoby Myers because he was torching you guys all day. Unbelievable. Seriously, though, the Broncos' offense looked a lot better with Sean Payton over there. Russell Wilson looked a lot better. His stat line wasn't crazy, but it really just looked a lot smoother over there on their offense. But they only had 16 points against the Raiders' defense. I already gave the Raiders' defense props. They didn't look bad, but it is the Raiders' defense, so we don't really know what to expect just off that 1 week. And it's a divisional game. They always play harder. The Commanders' defense is better than the Raiders, 100%. Their D-line's better. Maybe nobody on that team is better than Max Crosby, but their D-line as a whole is better. Their secondary is better, which I just don't like to pick this game at all. It's another coin flip, just like the Texans and Colts game. Really hard for me to pick, but, oh, man, I don't know. I'm going to take the Broncos. I'm not confident in it, though. Sean Payton's going to come back. He's the better coach in this one, and he's going to start off 1-1. Get a little get back from week 1. Then we have the Dolphins at the Patriots. Dolphins exploded last game against Chargers. I had a feeling nobody was going to cover Tyreek. That's not an absurd claim to make anyway, but they didn't do it, like I said. But I think the Patriots' defense is I know the Patriots' defense is way better than the Chargers. They did great against the Eagles last game. They only allowed 1 touchdown on offense. When it comes to the Dolphins, they gave up over or just at 200 rushing yards to Austin Eckler and Joshua Kelly. So I think that Ramondre Stevenson is going to have a great game against them. It's going to be a lot closer than people think. Some people are expecting Miami to just blow up and win, destroy them, wax them, whatever you want to say. I think this is going to be a really, really close game. I thought about making it an upset of the week, but Tua 4-0 against the Patriots. So, history will continue, and the Dolphins are taking a nail-biter of a game against the Patriots. Next, we have the Saints at the Panthers at the first Monday Night Football game. I wish they did not put this game on Monday night. I got my Saints jersey on, but nobody wants to watch the Saints and Panthers on Monday. It's probably going to be a boring game. Neither of these teams really looked great. Obviously, the Panthers lost. Saints did win. It was an ugly win. Bryce Young, he had 1 touchdown, 2 turnovers. He's going into a game against the Saints defense that forced 3 turnovers, and they were solely the reason that they beat the Titans. Saints offense didn't look great, but their special teams and defense looked elite. They blocked the punt, they forced turnovers, and their kicker's a badass. So the biggest thing is that the Saints O-line cannot play the way that they played last game. If Brian Burns is matched up against Trevor Penning, which I'm sure the Panthers will scheme for, it's going to be rough. They're going to need to double team him because Trevor Penning was getting destroyed by Arden Key. And honestly, the Saints should not have won their last game against the Titans because of Arden Key swiping that ball. That was 100% a fumble. I'll admit it. I'm going to take the win. But Trevor Penning needs to be better. Divisional matchups, they're always hard, but the Saints are a overall better team, and the defense will win them another game. Steelers versus the Browns, Monday Night Football. Browns surprised me last week. I said if Joe Burrow played, they were going to lose. Should have just stuck with I should have just, in my head, said Joe Burrow is not going to play, because he basically didn't. Cleveland, their defense was great, elite, and their offense looked fine too. That one Watson interception was really bad, but other than that, they looked good. On the other side, the Steelers, they disappointed me. I had picked them in the upset of the week, and they got absolutely manhandled by the 49ers. So with a team that looked great and a team that looked awful, I have no consideration in taking the Steelers. I'm taking the Browns here. It's a fairly easy choice for me. I know they're divisional rivalries, but I don't care. I think that the Browns are going to have a field day. Maybe not a field day, but they're gonna beat them. They are going to beat the Steelers. I think we're going to see the Browns defense carry them to another win against that awful-looking Steelers offense, unless they pick it up from week 1. All right, those are my week 2 picks. My voice is about gone right now. My throat is in so much pain. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your guys' picks down in the comments. Let me know what you agree with or disagree with, and I will see you in the next video.